What's up, everyone? Welcome to Free Advice Friday. It's going to be a good one today. It's going to be an interesting one today. It is the first live stream of 2023, which I'm very excited about. But I have also spent the last 3 nights with a fever over 100 degrees. It only happens at night. It's very strange. But each day when I wake up, I progressively lose a little bit more of my voice, which has been the interesting side of this. So, fortunately, my guest today has the ability to carry the show if need be, because he does his own live streaming as well. So, Tom, it's good to have you here, and I'm looking forward to you just taking the reins on this. I might just shut my camera off and take a nap for an hour.
Thanks for having me, Mark. I'm just deciding overnight if you're turning into a vampire or a werewolf. Which one are you transforming
Yeah, I'm
into?
not really sure. It's been the most bizarre thing that the 3 nights in a row, all 3 nights about 10 o'clock at night, I just all of a sudden the fever hits, and I'm like, this is the most bizarre thing. But yeah, I mean, whatever. If the worst thing is that I have a little bit of a fever at night when I'm trying to sleep, I guess I've got nothing to complain about. But yeah, as the voice continues to go a little bit further each day, I'm like, wow. I've got one big session with an agent next week. I think I've got until Wednesday to get my voice back. So
Okay,
yeah,
okay.
this
Have
weekend
you?
there's probably going to be
eh,
a lot of sleep.
Yeah. Have you ever put yourself in the mental place where you have to do an imitation of yourself sounding good?
Maybe that's going to be the secret here. I'm going to have to channel some improv and see if I can improv myself not having whatever
Yes.
plague is that I have right now.
I have done that over the years, and strangely enough, it works. It can make you passable. It's like, okay, I got to just do an impression of me, sounding fine and feeling great, and and then afterwards, I just
Then
die.
you're just done
But
because you've just completely used every ounce of energy that you have in your body. And yeah,
exactly. So for however long you're on that Source Connect or
yeah.
whatever, you're all like, hey everybody, this is great, and doing whatever you got to do and being all pithy and funny and
Yep.
all that stuff, and and then as soon as it's like, and we're out, you're like, yeah.
Then you're done. That's it. Then I'm done. Well, Tom, this is going to be good because I think you're a really good person to kick off the year because obviously part your branding VO strategist, a big part of what you do is helping voice actors to strategize on the business side, which you and I jive a lot in that area because you and I both think like entrepreneurs and business owners, whereas a lot of voice actors tend to be creative and come from the creative brain. And so
Hmm.
it's harder for them to figure all of this stuff out, which is why I guess guys like you and me get to have jobs teaching and helping and guiding. And so,
Hmm.
talk to us a little bit about the VO strategist, and what are some of the things that you're helping voice actors with, and what are some of the things that you are willing to talk with us about today if people have questions.
Okay. Well, the VO strategist started over 10 years ago, and it mostly came about because I became a successful, effective voiceover business when before that I was a desperate, lost, confused, emotion driven, starving artist. So once I started to figure everything out and then everything started to click, and then I kind of debuted at Voice 2012 in Disneyland, uh, June of 2012. That came because, and this may sound ridiculous, that I'm able to do what I do to help voice actors of all of experience levels navigate the voiceover journey, because basically I remember everything that I did wrong
Yeah.
for an extremely long period of time, and remembering that all the decisions that I made before I became effective were done out of inexperience, impatience, insecurity,
Hmm.
ignorance,
Yep.
or ego, or just plain fear. That's what made me make all my business decisions. And, shockingly, I didn't get far. But once I was able to kind of stand outside of myself and look objectively at myself and the voiceover industry and my relationship to the voiceover industry, that's when I was able to actually start to become an effective voiceover business. So what I do with my students is, regardless of where they're at in their journey, because I've worked with people that haven't produced a demo yet to people who've been in the business for 20 plus years and everything in between, I help them do exactly that. Look at themselves, the industry, and their relationship to the industry objectively, help them define success. What is success for you? Not what the loudest person in the Facebook group tells you it is.
Yeah.
And come up with a coherent, effective, actionable plan or series of plans for every aspect of your voiceover business so you could become effective. I use that word a lot because I'm sure that there are a lot of talented people who are listening right now who have an interesting voice. But I own an interesting pen. It doesn't make me an author. I own a wrench. It doesn't make me a plumber. So just because you have an interesting voice, or you can make a deep voice or imitate Peter Griffin or whatever, it doesn't make you an effective voiceover business.
Right.
So my job is to help people first get the right mindset, those systems of thought, how you think about what you're supposed to think about as an effective voiceover business, and turn those systems of thought into effective systems of execution so you can actually get stuff done and not just slam into the voiceover business sideways like most people do coming into the industry and having the audacity to be surprised that that they don't get far. So I help through my speaking appearances at conferences on great shows like this with lovely people like you, and I do a lot of guest workshops through a lot of studios all over the country, and the thrust of my what I can really do to help people is my mentorship program, which is we do 30-minute check-ins once a week, once a month, or twice a month. And at the beginning, we do a diagnostic where we figure out where all of their knowledge and skill gaps are, come up with a diagnosis and an action plan. And then in those 30-minute check-ins, we touch base on how they're implementing the action plan when we're not having our
Right.
sessions. And it's a lot of fun. There's a lot of great conversations. There's occasional crying, which is okay because
Therapy seems to be a big part of the job, doesn't it? Have you ever noticed
oh
that?
my goodness,
I I
I
say that to
didn't
my wife
know.
all the time. I'm like, I literally should have went to school to be a counselor because I feel like so much of what I end up doing in my coaching is actually more therapy than it is coaching.
It is, and it's interesting because I've noticed that the number one thing that keeps voice actors from being effective is themselves.
Yeah.
They get in their own way constantly. And it's not because they're crazy necessarily, or they're this or they're that.
Yep.
It's just that, they have a lot of society imposed or culture imposed or family imposed systems of thought, or Hollywood imposed,
Yeah.
or American Idol imposed, or chorus line imposed, things of that. This is how you're supposed to think and act. That, a lot of it is, and in the kindest way possible, breaking them down and building them back up,
Yep.
as in their systems of thought. Like I'm not some like drill sergeant,
Yep.
person, but it's like, okay, why do you think that? And then they have to think about it. And I'm like, well, does that line up with the reality of the voiceover industry, which is this, this, and this? And they're like, no. It's like, okay, then let's work with that. Let's
It
work on
it
that.
really it really has become a big part of what I do, the therapy, and it's funny the way you talked about your story is so much like I started writing a blog years ago, and the
Mhm.
whole purpose of that blog was I was sharing the lessons that I had learned from every single mistake that I had made, which
Yep, me too.
ultimately turned me into everybody's like, "Oh, this guy must be an expert." I'm like, "Well, I'm an expert at doing everything wrong, so I can certainly talk on that subject and help you to avoid doing it." So let's get
Mhm.
into some questions. And I think the first question, I think it's every voice actor's absolute favorite subject to talk about. And it's also probably the one of the biggest mistakes that every single voice actor makes. Let's talk about taxes.
Okay. Okay.
Let's talk about taxes and what we need to know to prepare ourselves, because otherwise there is going to come a point where you are going to receive a butt puckering tax bill from the
Yes.
IRS or the CRA if you're in Canada or wherever, and you're going to be
Right.
like, "Oh, I didn't know about this. What do
Right.
I do with this?"
Okay. Okay. So the first thing I will say is that I every once a year I do a class called "Make Taxes Less Taxing." So keep an eye out for that in March. I also have a video called "Make Taxes Less Taxing," which is on the VO Strategist shop. I will be doing an updated version of it, so don't buy it yet because I need to get the 2022 tax laws in there so it's as current as possible. So, but I will give you some like basics. If you are a voice actor, you need to get, first and foremost, a living, breathing accountant.
Hmm.
to help you with your taxes. TurboTax and QuickBooks, they're not gonna cut it for you
Yep.
because there's a lot of ins and outs. It's a lot more complicated because, at least from an American perspective, most people throughout their whole lives, they have one job at a time. They fill out a W-4. They get one W-2 at the end of the year. They take the standard deduction and they're done,
Hmm.
right? With voice actors, if you fill out a W-9 per client, you don't get taxed when you get that money, which means you're still responsible for paying that tax, regardless of how much or how little it is. You get a pile of 1099s at the end of the year, and then you need to sort all of this out. So being organized and having a CPA is a big help. I do have a free cash flow template spreadsheet, which you can download for free at the VO Strategist shop. So jump on over there. There's a couple of other free templates that you can get as well. But being organized as you go is also a big thing
Yep.
too. So this spreadsheet, this free template that you can get, it will auto sum a lot of your expenses as you go. So like I have a couple of envelopes that are fit down here that have all of my receipts already organized, done, and I
Yep.
don't bring them to my CPA. I just have a spreadsheet printout with the totals of everything, and I just hand that to them. Because also you don't want to waste their time either.
Well,
You don't want
that's
to just
also
bring
how
up.
you save money ultimately, right? Because if you bring the work to them already half completed, then you're paying your
Mhm.
accountant a lot less of an hourly rate to do all the work for you. So,
Yep, that's a big part of it too. So being prepared, and you're basically and work on your taxes. Think about you're working on your taxes all year, not just a flurry of frenzied activity a week or two before the
yep.
before the deadline. So that's the big one. And understand tax laws. I mean, you've got CPAs for that. I talk about that, but just understand it's an ongoing process, and it's the same thing when you pay your taxes. Even though you may not be filing as a business, you still need to be thinking about taxes as a business throughout the entire year.
It's one of these things where the most common quote when I talk to voice actors about this is, I can't afford an accountant. And my whole thing is, no, you can't afford to not have one, because a good
Right.
accountant is going to pay for themselves multiple times over in what they
Yes.
ultimately save you in having to pay. And
Yes.
I mean, I'm very fortunate in Canada. I can write off dang near everything. And I know
Hmm.
that there are state to state that varies in and of
Yes.
itself, right? There's not just one universal rule for that. And so
Yep.
having somebody that not only and I guess they need to have a general understanding of the industry, but they also need to understand where you live, right? Like going out and just
Yes.
finding a tax accountant from anywhere isn't
Right.
the same as finding one who understands your specific geographic location. But one thing I wanted to ask, do we need somebody who knows voiceover, or do we just need somebody who understands like small business or solopreneurship?
That's a great question. I'll put it to you this way. I had the same accountant for 20 years when I lived in New Jersey, and I had to train him, or we had to train each other on how to do my taxes as a voice actor. Now that I'm living here in New York City with my wife, who is a freelance floral designer, she's been using her own accountant for the past 20 years who specializes in self-employed people. So the transition from going over to from that and now filing jointly as both of us are self-employed with the same CPA, it was a seamless transition.
Hmm.
So they don't have to be voiceover specialized, but they have to be self-employed specialized. They need to understand how to manage 1099s and filing as a Schedule C, as opposed to your typical 9 to 5 employee who files
Right,
as a Schedule A.
right. So I know I'll preface this right now so I can save us any hassles. We are not financial experts. We are not accountants. Always consult
Nope.
an accountant for specific financial advice. But
Yep.
when you're starting out, give us a ballpark. What should we be setting aside? Is it
Ah,
10%? Is it 50%? Is it 20%? What should we be looking at so that we can not have that butt puckering moment at the end of the
right.
year where we have to pay and we don't have any money to pay?
Right. Now, I had that butt puckering moment the first year I
Me
made
too.
money in substance, and my CPA back in Jersey, he's like, "You owe this," and I was like, "That
Yep.
I could buy a good car, a good used car with that,"
Yep.
and I'm like, "Oh my god!" And that's when I learned about quarterly estimated tax payments. But just as a good general rule, if you want to say what I would recommend, and this is another sneak preview, is that create a separate savings account
Yes.
and make that separate savings account dedicated only to putting 25 to 30% of
Yep.
all the voiceover money that you make in that account.
Yep.
Because you know what? It's not your money, it's the government's money.
Yep.
So put it aside, let it earn what little interest you can, considering how horrible savings account interest rates are these days. Let it earn what it can. You just leave it alone. And then once every quarter, you make a quarterly estimated payment. Now, what I do is my CPA has coupons. I literally did that this week because the next payment is what, the 15th or the 17th of January for quarterly estimated taxes. And the CPA, based on what we owe or were owed last year, and based on my income, and assuming it's going to be roughly the same, then she prints out these little coupons for federal and for state.
Yep.
And so I know, so I just grab that piece of paper and go, oh, okay, I owe, excuse me, this. So I go to the IRS website, I pay it online. On New York, I just cut the check because I have to pay, because I live in New York City, so I have to pay New York state tax and city tax.
Yep.
That's all figured out. And I just stick it in there and I go. Now, there are some quarters you're going to earn more than you thought you would. There's going to be some quarters where you earn less than you thought you would. Honestly, I don't sweat it unless there's a huge gap. I'm talking like thousands, like many thousands of dollars difference. I'm not going to sweat. I'm not going to do all the, I'm not going to whip out the abacus and figure it all out. I'm not going to bother with that because it'll all come out in the wash at the end. But the fact that you're paying a couple of grand a quarter or whatever it is based on your income situation, it's a really good way to go. Because you know what? Again, it's not your money, and if you paid too much, you'll get it back.
Yep.
And if you didn't pay enough, you'll still have to pay something, but you've got other business expenses that may offset the shortfall of what you should have paid with your quarterly estimated taxes.
That was a big one for me. I think the two best pieces of advice that my accountant ever gave me, first and foremost, was setting up the separate account, transferring the money. So if I get a $100 check from some revisions, or if I get $1,000 check from a job, 30% of that automatically, no matter what, every single time, as soon as it lands in the bank, it gets transferred into a separate account. That just continues to build throughout the year. And then the number of write-offs that I was missing originally, wow, that makes a huge difference. And so getting to know those things is absolutely essential. So if you guys have questions that you want to ask for Tom, anything that's related to the business side of the voiceover business, feel free to type those in. Here's a question from Briscoe VO. Do you have any advice on how to get past the awkwardness of educating a client on rates?
Okay, great question, Briscoe. I always relieve myself of the responsibility of it by just showing them the Global Voice Acting Academy rate guide or the appropriate SAG-AFTRA link. So when you are educating a client, you're just saying, well, you don't go, well, this is what I charge because this is what I think I'm worth. This is the industry standard. If here's the link. If you'll click on the radio broadcast and click on and then look, you'll see 3 months regional. That's the usage fee. And that's how I do it. So, and then we can have a conversation from there. So have they ever heard of the Global Voice Acting Academy? Probably not. But, some very simple Googling, they will figure out that is the industry standard for non-union American voiceover narration. Now, if they live in a different country, which has a different economy, well, then that's a different conversation. But you know what's good for that? The Gravy for the Brain website has some good international rate guides. So you can do it that way too. So you need to collect information. It's like, where do they live? Because if they live in Hyderabad, region of India, the rate structure there is going to be different than what it is if you live in the Chicago metropolitan area, just because it's different economies. There's just different rate structures and expectations for services rendered. So have those links always lined up. But here's what I always say. I say, I'm happy to work with your client's budget within reason. And that's the big words, within reason. So if I say, well, this is a $400 explainer, I'm happy to work with your client's budget within reason. And they say, can we do it for $325? I'll probably be like, yeah, that's fine. No problem. But if they say, how about 50?
Yeah.
I'll say, like I said, within reason.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And if they have the audacity to say it's $50 okay when I quote 400, they are clearly shopping in the wrong aisle.
Yeah, it's not somebody
You
you
know
want to
what I
work
mean?
with anyway, so
Not
you're
somebody
not
you wanna work with
yeah,
anyway,
you're
because
not losing anything at that
because
point.
here's the other thing, is that the most difficult clients are always the lowest paying clients.
100%.
The easiest clients to work with are always the highest paying clients, and I can tell you that over 25 years and thousands of projects. The ones that have the money understand the industry and understand your value.
Yep.
So so that's the best way to educate, is use these links, explain this is the industry standard. And if you get within 10% of what that rate is, it's fine. You're not damaging, you're not damaging or devaluing if it's a little bit less, because that a little bit less now and that education that you're doing can turn into you that's you demonstrating your value as a knowledgeable voice actor, which increases the chance of them wanting to work with you again. Because if they've never done a voiceover before, and a lot of them have not, on on various pay to play sites, for example, and you can educate them and be the first one to explain it to them and walk them through the process, they will be thankful for you and
Yes.
grateful. And the next time a project comes along that you may be right for, you will be much more likely be top of mind. So marketing is not just about, hey, everybody, look at me on TikTok doing a dance. It's about, here's my value as a business, how I can save your business time and money and stress. That's more important than any TikTok video, though they are fun. I watch them too.
I think it's so important that we have to remember that I think sometimes we assume that everybody should just know this stuff. If you're hiring a voice
Oh,
actor, then you should just know this stuff. And so then
yeah.
sometimes we can take it personal, or we can get on the defensive right out of the gate, when the reality is maybe they never have hired a voice actor before and they legitimately don't know how this works. And so by asking us, part of our responsibility, if you're running a business, part of your responsibility is being able to explain some of this stuff and help people understand this stuff. Just like I don't know what the going rate is to get a toilet fixed. And so if I call a plumber, I'm going to hope that he's going to be kind enough to explain that to me and help me understand that. In the same way, somebody comes, needs a voiceover, you've got to have a little bit of patience. Don't just assume if they're throwing out a low ball number in the beginning that it's because they're trying to screw you. Maybe they just legitimately don't know any better, right? And
Yeah.
so patience is a big part of it.
Hmm.
All right, here's one from Laura. It says, for hyphenate actors, so on camera and VO in my case, how do you recommend managing marketing for each? Is it separate marketing completely? Is it half for one, half for the other? Is it content that covers both? What are your thoughts on that one?
Oh, that's a fantastic question. Um, this is my lawyer answer, is it depends. Um, it depends, because it depends on how you get your work. So, for example, if you're only on pay to play sites as a voice actor, then clearly that's a very clear line. That's a clearly separate line. If you only get your voiceover work through agents, for example, and that agent also represents you for on camera work, then that's their job, is to market and represent you and advocate for you on that level. So what I assume you're talking about is direct marketing. Like, what are you doing on social media? How are you talking to clients? Now, Marc, I'm going to say something. I apologize in advance if this contradicts everything that you teach, which is, voice seekers are not paying any attention to anything that any of us are doing on social media. They don't know what they're doing. They don't care what we're doing. Do you know why? Because the only thing they're doing on social media is putting up their content in a desperate attempt to get people to like and notice them. When do voice seekers actually pay attention to a voice actor on social media? It's when, as a result of your marketing efforts, you've driven them to your website and you've got your social media buttons, and then they click on them to check you out. Now, are they checking out to see all the wonderful voiceover work that you've done and pictures of you with your kitties and bunnies and doggies? Maybe. But you know what they're really doing, everybody? They're looking to see if you're an NDA violator.
Yeah,
They're looking to see if you are a client basher. They're looking to see if you are some religious or political whack job. They're looking to see if you have the potential to embarrass or damage their company
that's
as a
huge.
result of them booking you.
Yep.
So what you should be more focused on, yes, you should be posting your progress and your, in whatever videos you're doing and all that stuff. And that's nice. But honestly, they don't care. They're not paying attention to it. They're only going to pay attention to you to see if you are a risk online. Now, that being said, yes, you can develop long-term relationships with clients through direct marketing strategies, which is just too much to talk about today. But your job is to feed the algorithms of social media. And a part of that is making sure that you're not putting stuff out there that will hurt you in the long run.
The internet
So,
lasts forever. That thing that seems like a really great idea today. I mean,
mhm,
how many times have we seen somebody get canceled in the last year because of something that they said on Twitter 15 years ago, or
mhm,
something that they shared on Instagram 10 years ago, or whatever? And
mhm.
so that is such a big part of it, right? I mean, I remember my last radio job that I did, which I was hired in 2011. I knew 5 minutes into the interview that they had completely creeped all of my social media just based on the questions that they were asking.
Yep.
So I had been pre-vetted before I ever made it in the door for it even having an interview opportunity. And so it's so true that we have to beware what you share, right?
Yeah, beware of what you share. And also think about it. Every time you go on that first date or you just meet somebody at the PTA meeting, you're going to go home. Even before you get home, you're on your phone looking them up to see what they're about.
Yep.
Everybody is doing the same thing about everybody, and that's normal. So, when it comes to your question, Laura, about separated half for one, half for the other, I mean, just be a good human online. Just
Hmm.
demonstrate your humanity online and have your website really put together so you can drive traffic to it with your humanity. And then, of course, your combination of your outbound and inbound marketing strategies. This is a systems of thought. This is a systems of thought, kind of question that it's like, how do you frame how you think all of this works?
Yep.
You know what I mean? And like I said, in my experience, the voice seekers are paying almost no attention to anything that we're doing online because they're busy focusing on what they're doing online.
I think the other thing too is just no matter what is clarity in the messaging, right? If you're
Mm-hmm.
doing both, just make it really very clear that you do both, so that if I come onto
Yeah.
your website or I land on your social media, it's obvious to me who you are and what you do, so that I can determine whether or not you're the right person and you're going to be able to add value to whatever project I'm working on.
Mm-hmm.
This is an interesting question from Robin. Newish to VO, done 30 books at 30 decently paid VOs from pay to play. Should I go to APA or VO Atlanta? Which one presents the better opportunity? I think they're two very distinct audiences and two very distinct learning opportunities there. What are your thoughts?
Okay, well, I've been to APA 7 or 8, 9 times over the past 10 years or so, and I have spoken at VO Atlanta, 2016, 2019, 3 or 4 times. So I can talk about both of them. Is that it depends on why. Why do you want to go?
Yep.
If it's for education, like pure education, VO Atlanta is the way to go. JMC's putting together this great audiobook track, which I believe is led by Scott Brick, and there's
Yep.
a bunch of other amazing audiobook narrators. So if you're going for a purely educational purposes, um, also if it's also you want a chance to be like, hey, I'd love to meet Scott Brick because maybe I'd like to coach with him, so I'd love to interact with them and see if there's a connection or a vibe, or if our personalities and coaching and learning styles complement each other. So there's that. Now, the APA, Audio Publishers Association, for those who aren't aware, once a year they have APAC, which is the Audio Publishers Association conference. Most of the time it's held in New York. In 2016, they had it in Chicago that's because the BEA, the book something, the book expo went over there. So they had it over there, but it's almost always in New York City. Now, what the APA is limited education. There are some good seminars, and there's like a publisher producer track, and then there's a narrator track, unless they're changing the format this year. I'm not sure. But the publishers will be there, and many of the publishers will be there. Now, if your goal is to very shyly and terrifyingly slowly sidled up to them and ask them if they'll give you money to read books, stay home. Okay. And I'm sorry if that sounds cynical, but like all the publishers get ambushed every minute. They can't go to the bathroom without like five potential or current audiobook narrators coming at them. You know what I mean? So if you're going to go there, go with the right mindset. Go to learn,
Yep.
but go to meet other narrators. You will incidentally, and if you go to meet other narrators and develop rapport and relations with other narrators, the publisher thing is just going to happen naturally,
Mhm.
because 50% of all the voiceover revenue that I generate every year comes from peer generated referrals. Not me going, please give me money to say things out loud, please, 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 please. It's, hey, you should work with Tom. Like, the 2016 APAC in Chicago, I made it a point to keep track of everybody that I interacted with, narrator or publisher, and made it a point to via email or social media, whatever, say, hey, it was great hanging out with you. I hope you had a good time. It was great chatting with you. Hey, how'd it go? And one of my fellow narrators said, oh, I met this great small publisher. You should check them out. And I said, well, okay. Yeah. And she said, would you like me to introduce you? I'm like, yeah. I'm like, is there anybody you'd like me to introduce you to? And she's like, yeah, there's one publisher that I've been always trying to get in with. And I'm like, oh, I've worked with them. Let me introduce you. We introduced them to each other, and she's booked work through them. And I've booked like over a dozen books through the publisher. So it wasn't about the publisher, or, you know what I mean? It was interacting with good humans, be a good human and collect good humans. That's your best marketing strategy. That's your best business strategy. So to answer your question is, if you want to learn and grow and meet wonderful people, go to VO Atlanta. If you want to, you know, network with fellow audiobook narrators, and that could hopefully turn into, organically meeting publishers, sure. And guess what? All the publishers, they want to meet you. They want your demos. They want to develop their talent rosters. So just, I'll put it to you this way, to put a period at the end of this very long sentence, is if you're going to go to the APA, don't treat the publishers like a cash register that you're trying to pry open. Treat them like humans.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's a big part of it, regardless of what your preferred form of marketing is, whether it's doing in person, sending emails, making cold calls, whatever. At the end of the day, so much of it is just about building relationships, right? It's about getting to know people, getting that relationship established. Because if we're going to hire somebody, we're going to hire somebody that we know, like, and trust. And until I know, like, and trust you, I don't know if I can work with you. And how do I get to know, like, and trust you? By establishing a relationship with you.
Mm-hmm.
So here's a question from Suzanne. We're gonna preface this one again by saying we are not financial experts and we do not give out financial advice. And certainly, for the love of God, don't come to me for stock tips based on 2022. But I put money
Don't get
aside
me
last
started.
year and then really didn't owe much. Now I've gotten an email from a bank offering a 12-month CD at like 12%. I wonder if I could put that into a CD. That's a pretty stinking good rate.
12%?
Yeah, where are you getting that? Certainly
Yeah,
not in the stock market right now.
please post that link in the chat. But yeah, 12% on a 12-month CD. Yeah, that's an unbelievably good
Yeah.
interest rate. So again, we are not financial advisors, but I know I want to find out more
Yeah,
about that
I would
CD.
certainly be asking a lot of questions. I mean, I just put some stuff into a 12-month that's going to get me just under 5%. So
Which is not bad.
that's still not bad, but yeah, I would certainly be open to 12%. That would help me recoup some of the 35% that I lost in
Yeah.
2022.
The thing to remember is just make sure you have liquidity, because that's going to
Yeah.
get tied up for a year. And
Yep.
then if you withdraw it early, there'll be penalties that'll probably offset, if not take away
Yep.
all the interest that you've earned to that point.
Yep.
So, always keep a little bit back, so you have liquidity.
Yeah, there's always a catch when it comes to that stuff, but yeah, for sure. I was like, as soon as I saw 12%, I was like, dang, I want to go to your bank.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
It may be a credit union that's able to offer such a great rate.
Yeah.
So I'd love to hear about that.
All right, here's a question from Erica. What are your recommendations for books on money for solopreneurs and small business owners? You know what? I
Wow.
love this question because one of the most important aspects of running a business, I think, is our relationship with money. And most of us,
Yes.
whether we realize it or not, have a horrible relationship with money. And until
Yes.
you can address some of those things, you will be limited in what you can do and in what you can earn. So I'd be very curious to hear what your book recommendations are on this. I'm going to be taking notes on this one too.
Okay. The first thing I'll say is that I do have a list of recommended books on vostrategist.com. So the books that I talk about, there are links to all of them on my website. So you can just go there, click on those. And full disclosure, I'm an Amazon affiliate. So if you click on those links, I get a couple of pennies. It's not going to cost you any more or any less, but that's just the affiliate thing I've set up with Amazon. But with that in mind, the Rich Dad, Poor Dad books by Robert Kiyosaki changed my life.
Mm-hmm.
It completely changed the way I think about money and understanding my relationship to money. The premise is basically this, is that you don't work for your money. You make your money work for you.
Yes.
You are in charge of it. Don't be a slave to it, because a huge part of it, because the whole Rich Dad, Poor Dad concept is about how Robert Kiyosaki, growing up in Hawaii, had his real dad, which was a teacher, and then he had his best friend's dad that he worked for in the general store. And the best friend's dad who worked in the general store was the rich dad based on his mentality and practices. And his real
Hmm.
father, the teacher, was his poor dad based on his mentalities and practices and relationships to money. So definitely buy Rich Dad Poor Dad.
Yeah.
Definitely buy Cash Flow Quadrant. And then definitely buy 10 steps. I think it's called Before You Quit Your Job, 10 Steps to Entrepreneurship, to kind of really mentally prepare you for the relationship that you have to have with money, because an employee has a completely different relationship with money than a
Yes.
business does,
Yeah.
because employees versus businesses earn money differently, save money differently, spend money differently, and are taxed differently. And understanding those relationships in your head and then in practicality is critical. So that's my big recommendation, is the Rich Dad Poor Dad books.
That this whole subject of money is one that I could talk about endlessly, because I came to realize, I want to say it was probably around 2011, 2012. I had somebody come into my life who inadvertently made me realize how spectacularly awful my relationship was with money, and how many
Mm.
negative narratives I had just around money and my relationship with money. And when you say things like, I can't afford it, which seems like an innocent statement, but actually ends up
Mm.
being so much more powerful than what you probably ever realize. And meeting that individual and recognizing some of those negative narratives that I had, and some of those negative stories that I had around money, the money blocks that I had, like, that was absolutely life changing for me. I would say for me, Tony Robbins' Money Master the Game.
Mm.
I would not have a retirement account today if it was not for that book. I bought my first stocks after reading that book, and am eternally grateful for the
Hmm.
money lessons that I learned from that one. And one that I read last year, which is a newer one, is Morgan Housel, The Psychology of Money, which was
Ooh,
another really, really good one.
I'm writing that one down.
I heard him on a podcast, and was really impressed with the things that he had to say. So I picked up that one. So that was The Psychology of Money by Morgan Housel. There was another one that I quite enjoyed. It's called You're a Badass at Making Money, which
Ooh.
is Jen Sincero is the author of that one. So there's definitely some good books out there that can teach you. Learning how to overcome your money blocks and some of your negative narratives around money, though, is so important
Hmm.
in ultimately whether or not you're going to achieve financial success, because it also gets into prosperity, into lack mindset, and abundance mindset, and things of that
Oh yeah.
nature too, right?
That's a huge one. It's you can learn everything you need to know about somebody once you figure out if they operate from a position of scarcity versus a position of abundance.
Yep.
And this is readily apparent. Just go to those Facebook voiceover groups. You can easily just put everybody in one of those two baskets
Yep.
just based on the content that they post
Yep.
and how they comment on content.
Yeah.
It'll tell you exactly who they are and how they operate mentally. And that also tells you who to gravitate towards and who to stay the heck away from.
Yeah. Yeah. And that lack mindset, that scarcity mindset, that is what leads to desperation. And that desperation that's what you take into your auditions, whether you mean to or not. When you go into the studio, if you're desperate to book a job because you don't have enough money to cover rent this month or whatever, that mindset is absolutely coming into the booth with you, and it is going to carry
100%.
through. Yeah.
Law of attraction, if you're familiar with that concept or that book, is you attract what you think and feel.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So if you're all about scarcity, that you're going to attract it. If you think about abundance and behave through a position of abundance, you're going to attract abundance.
Hmm. Right on. All right, here's another one. This is from Steve Daniels. How would you balance Dunning-Kruger versus imposter syndrome? Are there certain sectors of VO where it's best to utilize upside of either?
Wow. Now the Dunning Kruger, if I'm not mistaken, is the one. I always thought that's the one where you're so stupid you think you're smart. Is that what that one is? The Dunning Kruger effect.
I'm stumped on this one. So yeah, Steve, you may have to leave a comment in there to clarify that one. But I mean, imposter syndrome. I think every one of us has struggled with that at some point in
Oh,
time.
geez, I still have that
Hmm.
sometimes. Once in a while, absolutely, I still have that. Um, Well, to address the first one, if Dunning-Kruger is what I think it is that one of the biggest problems for people coming into okay, that's correct. One of the biggest problems for people coming into the industry, the voiceover industry, is that they don't know what they don't know. They are irrational confidence. Okay. Well, yeah, they don't know what they don't know. And I think to the Dunning Kruger effect is they can't get out of their own way, like I said earlier, because they think they have this deep voice. And when they do all of their auditions, they make sure they do it in such a way so their
Right.
chest vibrates just so. And aren't they wonderful? And they're so obsessed with how they sound, they haven't the faintest idea how to tell a story.
Right.
And good voice actors, effective voice actors, are good storytellers.
Yeah.
So you get rid of your irrational confidence through education and learning how to open your eyes and look at yourself. Metacognition, I believe, is the term. How you think about what you're supposed to think about, being able to look at yourself objectively and go, okay, I have an interesting voice, but I don't know what the hell I'm doing. What can I do to figure out what the hell I'm doing? As to imposter syndrome, I mean, everybody has some level of it, and
Yep.
for some people it's like passing, and for some people it's crippling. But I'll tell you how I got over the bulk of my imposter syndrome. Is I went to my first voiceover conference, and I went to my first voiceover conference 2011. And I didn't think I deserved to be there because I didn't think I deserved to be successful as a voice actor or as a person. So when I went to that voiceover conference, and this was FAFCon, which is an unconference format,
Yep.
they don't have FAFCons anymore, sadly, but only 100 people were allowed in, and there were no presenters. If you got in and you got vetted, you had to be a voice actor of a few years of experience with a portfolio to show the producers of the conference that you had to go and you had to contribute.
Yep.
Nobody, what did Amy always say? Nobody likes the person who comes to the potluck dinner with nothing but a fork. So your job is to be able to present or facilitate or effectively contribute on some level to some subject matter in the conference. So I did mine on how to think like a business, how to write a mission statement, how to set goals, and how to write an action plan. And I didn't realize it at the time, but nobody had ever done that before at a voiceover conference. I was the first person to do that because I had all this corporate training experience working for restaurants and stuff. So I understood how to do presentations. I was already thinking like a business, and I was, getting closer and closer to being successful. My definition of successful. And once I did that, and it was a huge success, and my voiceover business improved literally the Monday I got home.
Yeah.
All those seeds I'd been planting for 15 years literally came to roost. I, to this day, I don't know. There's no logical reason. It just all happened. So for those of you who are of a religious, spiritual, cosmic bent, then you can put whatever on it. But that taught me that I deserve to be a successful voice actor. And then through therapy, I learned that I deserve to be successful as a human being.
Right.
So I am not a positive attitude, believe in yourself kind of person because, according to Stephen Covey, if you have a map of Detroit and you're trying to get around in Chicago, a positive attitude isn't going to do a damn bit of good for you. You're just going to be lost and not care. The point is to have a map that matches what you're navigating.
Yep.
So if you're having confidence problems, make sure the map matches the territory of the voiceover industry. And you do that with, sorry to sound too salesy, but working with people like Marc and I, who can help you navigate the voiceover industry with both eyes open and both feet on the ground.
Yep. Right on. Here's another one. We haven't talked about LLCs or anything like that yet. So if you already have an LLC for a business in a different profession, should you do a DBA or establish an entirely different LLC for voiceover?
Okay, the first thing I'll say about that is that most people who go into voiceovers don't need to incorporate or form an LLC or anything. But what happens is people go on some voiceover Facebook group and say, "Hey, should I incorporate? How should I incorporate?" And you get all these answers from people that didn't ask you what state you live in.
Right.
And the laws for all of them are different.
Yep.
So if you go to LLC University, for example, you can find all the rules for setting up an LLC. So guess what? I did my first voiceover in 1996. I am still a sole proprietor
Yep.
because I don't need to be. I do my taxes. I'm with my CPA. I file everything. I organize my finances. I'm fine, because most voice actors don't need it. Why do you need to incorporate? You incorporate to protect your business from damage. And what kind of damage can you get as a voice actor? Reputational damage. How do you get reputational damage? Well, you could get it by getting so sick you blow a deadline, or your equipment blows up so you blow a deadline. Is any company going to sue you because you got laryngitis or because
Yeah.
your hard drive crashed? No.
I,
So
I,
don't. My opinion is don't even bother with that until you're earning at least $150,000. Then you can get tax benefits from incorporating and forming an LLC.
it feels like a status thing to me.
It's a
And I,
total status
yeah,
thing.
like, oh, I can say that I have an LLC or whatever. Like in Canada, we don't even have LLCs. It doesn't exist. You're either sole proprietor or you're incorporated. And the
Right.
hoops to jump through for incorporation are like, even at the point that I'm at, my accountant's like, it's still not worth it for you. And so it
Yeah.
definitely does make a difference on where you're at too.
Mm-hmm. 100%. Yes. People do it because most people LLC because they feel like that's what they're supposed to do because their uncle who knows nothing about voiceovers told them
Said
to.
that was their advice. Yeah. Question from Rosanna: how do you balance working in and pursuing multiple genres? I feel like with audiobooks, which I love, it is. Oh, question went off the screen. It's hard to balance working for commercials as well, which I also love, and pay more. You do a lot of different genres of voiceover.
I
How do you balance it?
I do a lot of different voiceovers, but what I'll say is that it took me a very long time to be able to do a lot of different voiceovers. So I do e-learning, corporate. I classify them into academic e-learning, industrial e-learning. I do a ton of that. I do a lot of explainer videos. I do a smattering of commercials. I'm on my 73rd audiobook, so I do occasionally do those a couple times a year. I just started doing political, which is very exciting. And I booked some stuff doing political. So the way to balance it first is okay. First, the system of thought that people come into the voiceover industry thinking is like, I'll get training in 5 different demos at the same time, 5 different genres, produce 5 different demos, and then I'll market myself at all of them at the same time. All it's going to do is just demonstrate that you suck or are mediocre at a genre.
Yep.
Pick one genre.
Yep.
Pick the genre, and I don't care if it's a genre you like the most. Pick the genre that has the most potential for you to make the most money as quickly as possible.
Yep.
Get as good as you can in that one, generate a revenue stream in that one, generate a profit in that one, and then take the profit from that genre to pick the next genre to get your training, demos, and develop marketing campaigns. So it's also understanding how different genres of voiceover are cast. So for example, if you're doing audiobooks, you don't need an agent. If you want to do high-end commercials, you do need an agent. So I mean, I balance it just because I've been doing it for so long that I've got 11 demos on my website, and I understand that I cannot go full throttle on any given genre at any given period of time. Sometimes you just got to let one coast and then really focus on one with various things, and then leave that one alone for a little while and focus on another one. So it is a balancing act, and it's just a matter of being smart. Also, you don't want to confuse yourself, you don't want to confuse the voice seekers, and you don't want to confuse the robots.
I think one of the things I'm going to get in trouble for saying this, but whatever.
Please do.
I'm used to it. Look, what is a demo producer's job? A demo producer's job is to produce demos and make money for themselves. And so
Mhm.
naturally, a demo producer is going to tell you that you need 17 different demos because they get paid for all 17 different demos.
Right.
Your responsibility as a business owner is to make money for your business and make wise investments that produce return on investment for your business. And I have said all along that I don't know how voice actors with 17 different demos are effectively using all 17 of those different demos. I mean, I've never had more than, I don't know, 5 or 6, and I make good money because I've found the genres that work for me, the genres that I book in the most, and those are the genres where I put all of my effort into. But I guess that's also part of it too, is I could care less about credits. I care about cash checks. And so, like, I'm not putting any effort into pursuing genres that I don't know that I'm ever going to make money in just because I want to chase a credit, or I want to be able to say, oh, I did a thing for, or, you know, I booked this fancy video game or whatever. I don't care. I care about cash checks. I care about money in the bank. And so
Right. And if credits is part of your value system, there's nothing wrong with
No,
that. That's
no.
perfectly fine. You just need to be aware of that.
Yep.
Don't lie to yourself
And then
and
build your
make sure that
business
you
accordingly.
and build your business
Yeah.
accordingly. Exactly.
Yep.
So what I do is like every year I pick one or two genres that I'm either going to explore or improve.
Hmm.
So like late last year I got a political demo and then I submitted it to my manager and I booked I think 4 or 5 political spots. So I'm thrilled with that. So this year for me is going to be the year of political.
Yep.
So really focusing on that. And you know what I mean? That means other genres I'm not going to pay as much attention to, either because
Yep.
I can coast with them because I have so many legacy clients, or
Yep.
because it's just one that I just haven't gotten off the ground yet. And I'm not worried about that right now. That, that demo X it's just gonna sit there. It's
Yep.
not going anywhere. It's gonna be fine. The fact that it's on my website is going to just naturally help the SEO with all the keywords and stuff. And,
Yep.
so balance, just pick one, two a year at the absolute most.
Yep.
And don't try to do more than that, especially if you haven't really developed a revenue stream in any given genre yet.
Yep. For sure. All right, here's a good question from Erica. Do you create a budget for operating expenses? Do you have a separate account for operating expenses that's different from a business income account? This is a profit first idea. What are your
Yes.
thoughts on that?
Yes, I have a budget for operating expenses and I have a budget for my personal expenses. I have a business checking account, which all the voiceover money goes into and out of coaching and, via coaching and voice actor. And then I have a personal checking account. And then once a month, I just do a bulk transfer and I just call it profit transfer, that I transfer from the business checking account to the personal checking account to cover my personal expenses. And that's it. It's leave it as clean as possible, but make sure you have those two separate accounts because you need to have a clean audit trail in case you get audited. Because if you don't, and all your business and your personal expenses are all mixed up, it may not be good for you. It may not bode well for you.
And that's where, like, I know you mentioned you've got spreadsheets that you use. I use waveapps.com.
I love Wave Apps. I use that
I
for all my
track.
invoicing. I love
Yep,
it.
I use that for all my invoicing, but I also, my accountant said, use this for your accounting, and showed me how to do all of my expenses and everything in it, so I can do all of that stuff in there, keep track of every single expense, track it all. But yeah, you have to know your numbers, right?
Oh,
Otherwise, how
yes.
do you know if you're profitable? Like, how do you know if you're actually making money or if you're actually losing money if you're not paying attention to your numbers? And you have to know approximately, at least, what are your expenses every month. Like, I need to know what my expenses are for my family budget, rent and heat and hydro and all these different things. I need to know what those numbers are so that I can figure out, okay, well, I got to earn at least X after taxes in order to be able to just cover those basic expenses. And so now I know, like, it gives me a number that I have to aim for, right? And so I think that's another thing that I think a lot of voice actors don't do. And I think that comes back to what we were talking about earlier, our relationship with money and how we think and feel about money and how we treat money. But knowing your numbers is such a big part of this whole thing. If you're going to successfully run a business, you got to understand how it all works. Right on. All right. Well, again, if anybody has any questions, feel free to type those into the comments. I want to put this up on the screen here. If you want to get in touch with Tom, you got YouTube channel, Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, all there. Talk to us a little bit about YouTube, because you're doing some streaming on your own, right?
I am. A few months ago, I started doing my own Ask Me Anything channel on YouTube. And I've learned through my social media manager and other sources is that, videos are king when it comes to search engine optimization. So just for me promoting myself as a voice actor and the VO strategist, it's big, but also it's for you guys. Just being able to share little whatever observations or musings throughout the week and the month in an effort to commiserate with you guys is become really important to me. And YouTube is just a fantastic medium to do that. So yes, I host an Ask Me Anything once a month. My next one will be Monday, January 30th with Anna Garduno, cartoon narrator and coach extraordinaire. And my blog gets posted on there too. So my blog is both written, which you can subscribe to at vostrategist.com/blog. And you can also subscribe to YouTube to get the video version of it as well.
Right on. So check out the stream, subscribe to the blog. Definitely. There's so much good advice in there. I sat in, when was it? Was it 2019 that you were at Mavo?
2018.
2018,
I
you were at
I
Mavo.
remember what you said to me because I just
Yeah.
said it to my wife a couple of days ago.
Tom
Uh,
taught a class at Mavo that I said it should be mandatory before you even get your voiceover card. Like before you're even allowed to do this business. It's you go to conferences and it's really hard to keep up because at any given time there might be 4 or 5 or 6 different sessions going on. And I always think there are certain sessions that should be the only session in a time slot so that everybody has to attend it. And
mhm.
the session that you taught on just kind of business basics and building some of the structure and all of that, to me it felt like this should be one of those mandatory sessions that everybody should attend
Uh,
because it makes a big difference ultimately, and it's stuff that
yeah.
most of us don't have a clue about.
Right. And the ironic thing, Mark, is that those are always the least popular classes that the
Yep.
least amount of people go to because everybody goes to a voiceover conference because they want to learn how to make a cartoon voice.
Yeah,
And no
like
offense to anybody that wants to do that. And it's awesome if that's what you want to do. But I am constantly ignored in the voiceover industry when people need to understand the basics of this because you can have the best cartoon voice in the world, but if you don't know how to pay your taxes or workflow or project management and all the grown-up stuff that people are actually trying to escape by going into the voiceover industry and
yep.
not knowing that they have to do the grown-up stuff. I tell everybody this, Mark, is if you want to be an effective artist inside the booth, you have to be an effective business outside of the booth. So I like your suggestion that all my stuff is mandatory and I get the biggest audience as possible. So I think that's great. Let's tell all the conferences that so I can appear at every single one of them.
I got into this stretch for a couple of years, and I don't know. I don't know. At first, it just seemed like coincidence. Then it felt like it was a big joke. But for some reason, at every conference, one of my sessions was up against Joe Cipriano teaching promo.
Oh,
And I'm like, okay, seriously? Like, if you have to choose between going to a promo class with Joe Cipriano and going to a marketing class with Marc Scott, which session do you think that people are going to pick? And even Joe says, you guys should be in Marc's marketing class. Like, Joe's literally telling people you should be in Marc's marketing class, but everybody wants to go be with Joe because he's freaking legend. And of
yeah.
course, but it just kept happening at conferences that I kept getting scheduled against him. I'm like, this is just cruel. This is not fair. But it's so true. It's the side of the business that we don't want to talk about because it's the side of the business that we don't understand. It's the
Mhm.
side of the business that makes us the most uncomfortable because whether you're talking about marketing and having to put yourself out there, putting yourself out there immediately brings up, fear of failure and or for some fear of success. What if people do decide to
Mhm.
hire me and I can't deliver the goods? Or
Mhm.
you've had that experience where you've got this giant tax bill at the end of the year that you weren't ready for, and so we get scared about all this stuff. But it's the stuff that we need to absolutely know and we need to understand. Here's a question from Steve: when marketing, how to balance creating an organic, emotional, personal connection, but not coming off as a cringe and disingenuous. I think this is really important. I don't want to
Mm.
force it if it's not organic, but also don't want to be too direct. There is a balance that has to be found in those posts, right? And I'm sure you've seen posts where you're just like, oh, come on, that's just BS. Like you can just read right through the person, right?
Yeah, yeah. Um, eh, I used to say there's a very fine line between, promoting yourself and being a self-aggrandizing clown. But you know what? I don't believe that anymore because the difference is obvious and very clear. Your job as an effective VO marketer is to demonstrate value and progress. And your value as a voice actor is not your credits or your funny accents or the funny voices or dialects or whatever. I mean, that's a percentage of it. I'll give you an example. Fourth quarter 2020. So this is last quarter 2020 when we're still deep in the heart of the pandemic, no vaccine in sight. I narrated an audiobook, and as a result, I messaged every single client, potential client, current client, past client in my database. And I said, I'm sure a lot of you are struggling right now with the pandemic and you're working at home and you've never done so before. Well, I happen to narrate an audiobook called The Long Distance Teammate. And it's a book about how do you set yourself up for success if you're working from home, not just on a logistical technical level, but also how to make sure that you're not getting passed over for recognitions, promotions, and raises. So I marketed that book not because I sound so bleeping great in it. It's because the product had value. So I said, here's the value of this product that I happened to narrate.
Yeah.
And I got very good responses. So if you do feel the need to demonstrate your value through a voiceover that you've done, which, by the way, I say do it sparingly. Don't do it that much, because then you
Yep.
just look like a clown, just a self-promoting clown.
Yep.
Do it to be like, this is a service or product or company that I personally believe in, that I happen to narrate. Here it is, and make it all about them, and don't make it about you. So that's just one of many, many examples I could give, but we're
Yeah.
almost out of time.
Let's take one more question before we wrap this up, because I think this is a really important topic. Do you have any thoughts on how to create a VO biz budget before you're making money? This is the part I'm curious to hear your answer on. What amount of seed money should folks have to get started? Because I have thoughts on this one. I'm curious to see if my numbers align with your numbers. How
Okay.
much does it take to start a business, a VO
Well,
business?
but the question is that you ask yourself from that is, what is my definition of success
Yep.
as a VO business? If your definition of VO biz success is you want to do it for grocery money and save up for that Disney vacation, that is a perfectly legitimate, valid definition. If it's,
Absolutely.
I just want to do this on nights and weekends and maybe help save for my kids' college or pay off that car loan, that's totally legit too.
Yep.
If it's, I want to be a full-time voice actor and replace all of my current income with VO income,
Hmm.
that's also a completely different answer.
Yep.
So you need to answer that question and have it locked in, because I want to talk for money, kids, is not a good answer. That's a child's answer.
Yep.
You need to come up with a coherent answer with a plan. Now, with that in mind, if it's about saving for that Disney vacation, okay, well, that's simple. How much did this Disney vacation cost? Flight, hotel, food, tickets, the monorail, all that stuff. Whatever that number is, well, then that's the amount that you want to make.
Yep.
Great, easy. If it's income replacement, then you need to figure out what all your expenses are. How much do I need to cover my rent slash mortgage, all of my bills, all of my groceries, all of my debt, all of my partner and children and dogs expenses? How much do I pay for my insurance? How much how much do I want to put away to save for retirement, a new house, a new car, college? Add up all those numbers, add 10%, that's your magic number.
Yep.
So when it comes to seed money, I don't know what that number is, because I don't know what your current expenses are, and I don't know what hardware, software, and training that you need. Now, if you're starting completely from scratch, you need a few thousand for training, you need a few thousand for a demo, you need a few thousand for home recording. You can be free to have a free website, which is fine for now, and you can get away with not spending any money on marketing for the near term, but you also have to spend money on, what I would strongly recommend is going to live in-person events, networking events, conferences, and stuff like that. Figure out what those numbers are, and that's your goal.
Yeah. I've always said I think startup costs for voiceover, and I think startup costs, regardless of whether your goal is beer money or income replacement or retirement income on the side or whatever, certain startup costs don't change, because you still got to have a studio, you still got to have at least one demo, you still got to do some training before you can get that demo right. And so I think 10 to 15,000 minimum. When you look at the price of coaching now, right? Coaching's anywhere from 150 to $300 an hour for the most part, depending on who you're
Thereabouts.
coaching with.
Mhm.
Demos are going to cost you 2,000 to 2,500, give or take, for demos if you're going to get one or two of those done, right? And so home studio, I mean, you don't need to spend a fortune there, but you can easily spend a couple $1,000 by the time you buy your microphone, get your DAW, get your interface, do some soundproofing treatment, whatever, all of those sorts of things, right? I mean, you'd be pretty surprised how quickly you can burn through $10,000 or $15,000 in startup costs, but you're starting a business. What other
Yeah,
businesses out there that you can start for absolutely free? Is there
not
one?
many.
Yeah,
I don't. I none of that are legal.
yeah. Well, Tom, this has been absolutely fantastic, and I thank you so much for your time. I'll put this up on the screen here again. If you want to get connected with him, check out his live streams that he's doing. Subscribe to his YouTube channel. You're watching on YouTube right now, so you can jump over to his YouTube channel and do that while you're here. Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, of course. The VOstrategist.com is the website where you can go and check out all of the different classes, webinars, conferences. I mean, you got a bunch of stuff coming up this year. Talk to us about a few of the different things that you've got coming up here maybe in the next couple months.
Oh, good. Good thing I have my topic calendar spreadsheet. Uh, On the 17th, I'll be speaking before the Tennessee Voiceover Exchange about Get Your Act Together. So I'll talk to you about how to set your goals for 2023. You do not, if you're not a member of the Tennessee Voiceover Exchange, go check out the event. You can reach out to Christy, who runs it. And as a non member, she can help you attend. In February, also in January, I'm going to be going to the Voice Actors Studio in Henderson, Nevada, which is Melissa Moat's wonderful studio and voiceover school. And I will do an all-day e-learning and genre journey. So it's a whole day exploring every genre of voiceover in the morning. And then in the afternoon, we focus on e-learning and all the subgenres. And there will be live coaching. You can attend in person or online. February, I'll be appearing for the VO Network, Build Your Marketing Campaign. March, I'll be doing the audiobook business workshop for Johnny Heller, and I'll be doing an online business VO workout with Everett Oliver. And in April, I'll be appearing before the Long Island voiceover, also doing, again, Get Your Act Together. And I'll definitely be a gravy for the brain for the summer. Everything else is still in negotiations. So I will let you know. Just keep an eye on the vostrategist.com/events page for all the other appearances that I'll be making this year. And my once a month AMA.
So basically, you're going to be everywhere doing everything, and there should be no
Yeah.
problem running into Tom. And if you have an
Nope.
opportunity to sit in on one of these sessions and learn some of the business strategy side of things, I mean, honestly, if you can learn that side of it and get that side of voiceover set up, I think that's one of the most important foundational blocks, right? I'm not saying you don't need to do performance coaching. Of course you do. But you can be the most incredible performer with the most expensive and fancy home studio. And if you do not have a clue how to run a business, it's not going to matter. You have to know this stuff. So, Tom, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for everything that you've shared. I'm so grateful to you for doing this. And
I'm grateful your voice held out for an hour.
yeah, I made it. I made it through, and now I'm going back to bed. This has been a very interesting couple of days, but we got through it. So, Tom, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thanks, everybody, for coming out and watching, and thanks for all of your questions, too.
Thanks, everybody. This was fun.
Thanks.